Hello, everyone. Welcome to this first event of the interview program from the IMPD group at Politecnico di Torino. The program of interviews looks at perspective of innovations, opportunities in the different industry, and it develops thanks managers and students that discuss together about specific industrial sectors. Today we have the first interview that is about the food industry, and it is a great honor for me welcoming Michela Petronio. Michela Petronio has a demonstrated seniority in innovation management in the food industry. She has been at many years, in Barilla Group. She covered the role of product development manager, innovation manager, with a specific focus on production processes and group technologies. She has also experience in more research-specific activities and ambits, and in particular, the domains of the science, nutrition, agronomy, etc. She led the research and design laboratories at the Barilla Group, where she was able to apply methods and approaches to support innovation processes. For instance, I remember design thinking or open innovation approaches. Now I leave you the stage and the micro, students. We have 5 students here that spend their time to conceive some question for you, Michela. I'm sure that it will be interesting and the discussion will be valuable, and it will provide students ideas, perspectives and hints in the field of food with respect to business as well as to technologies. So our first question is from Giovanni Greco, and it is on customer habits and cultural aspect. Giovanni, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you. Nowadays, we are observing a generational change of customer habits, needs and thoughts, more attention as well as more issues about diets. Moreover, influencers are powerful in moving opinion of mass of customers. In addition, technologies are providing new opportunities of products, for example, artificial meat or the strong expansion of the insect-based nutrition, and of production processes, for example, 3D printing. First, we want to know in which direction is changing for customers the value associated to food in terms of shape, ingredients, and raw material, and how this is also changing the purchasing process. In particular, which features and elements that were once fundamental are no longer relevant.
Okay, so thank you for the question, and hello to everyone. So it's a very interesting question because, you know, food is a little bit different from any other consumer product. So because food consumption is deeply rooted in who we are. So choosing a different food or, food behaviors, choosing a product is not really just following the next fashion for food. It's really more about a self-expression mode. And that's why we are not so open to change our food habits. So that's why when we are raised, actually, we link the food to emotions. And you can also think that if you think about the food, the taste, the flavors, it immediately reminds you the moment where maybe you tasted the food the first time, or something that maybe your grandma was doing. So, and this is very important because really when we are in front of a new food, we might have been traveling and encountering a new culture. We are curious, but we also are a little bit scared. We have like a sort of barrier in changing our food behaviors. And this has to do with our genes eventually. So we are the same human being as the human beings that we used to be thousands of years ago. And again, food is not a pair of shoes that you just wear and you go. It's really something that you input in your body. And so genes, are not evolving. So food must not change so much. And if you think about the basic ingredients we are eating today, the basic food, so we have changed the way we are eating, but we have not necessarily changed what we are eating. And so this is the first consideration that we have to take in mind when we think about novelties about food. And so this is a fact. We are not, as human beings, so open to change the way we eat. But it's also true that as a form of self-expression, we use food to demonstrate who we are, how we are changing. And so that's, I mean, the traveling experience is very peculiar, because if you want to show that you have been traveling, you are showing your like very open attitude to taste new things. Or if you want to show that you are very traditional and you love the place where you live, I mean, you make different food choices. So this is important. And so it's also true, I mean, that we have been seeing in the last few years insects-based product, or cellular agriculture, which is producing food from cloning cells. So how can we really deal with all of this? So I think that there are not good food and bad food. And so there are only food choices and food patterns. At the end of the day, we don't pick a food and we eat that food because we have, I mean, to have an input in nutrients. We follow a dietary pattern. And this is the beauty of food. You can combine foods. So we have principles. As a company, we favor and promote the Mediterranean diet. By the way, is also a diet which has been demonstrating as one of the most sustainable, one of the most one of the healthiest, and this is not a prescriptive diet. So again, there are not good food or bad food. There are combinations, association. So for instance, the Mediterranean diet is promoting fruit, vegetables, and whole grains at the base of this ideal pyramid. And then you can, of course, use other products. So you can have some dairy-based product. You can have some meat, preferably lean meat, white meat. And then you can also have your cake once in a while. So the celebration of a moment, which is again something very related to who you are and your moment and your sharing and your social behaviors are all there anytime you make a food choice. And so if the question is, will we eat insect? There are already places in the world where they're eating insects. And that's another very important consideration. So maybe we will mix more and more different cultural habits. And once that we go back traveling, this will be, again, more and more true. However, we cannot push people to eat insects in places where insects have a different meaning. And as food choices must be meaningful for you, I mean, the future will be, I think, more people moving around the planet, more people interacting, which means more mixing foods and food cultures. But food will be the same, I think. And also the idea of having a pill. I mean, you remember the idea of the astronaut pill. So you will have a very convenient food, everything in a pill, which is best for you because it contains everything. At the end, is not working. Because food is not only nutrients. I mean, there is much more around your food choice.
Okay, thank you, Michela. So it's really interesting. What are you saying is that if you want to innovate in food, you must take into account culture, and you have to innovate by changing less as possible the things. So it is something that is completely counterintuitive, because usually we think that to innovate, we have to change everything. And instead, what you are saying is that to innovate, we have to maintain solid our culture and our habits.
Yeah,
mixing.
No, you're saying a very interesting thing, which is to innovate, you have to take in account the human being. And so that's how we also have been innovating our innovation mode, which was from a very technological approach, which was how can we improve an equipment, how can we improve nutrients, to putting the consumers again at the center of our exploration, and taking consumers with us and exploring new concepts with them.
Okay, thank you. So I would pass the second question from Stefania Ottone that is on creativity and innovation processes. Stefania, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Well, in the article of 2015, I read about the co-creation and the interactive relationships with the customer and the use of social media within Barilla. From this article, I learned that Barilla had a platform called Barilla Factory Platform, a dedicated tool for interaction with stakeholders through which different countries and cultures are connected with the purpose to attract the creative people and new talents. Now, a few years later, what is Barilla doing? Are there also new methods, things, and approaches that Barilla is applying?
Okay, thank you. It's interesting because every time I get a new question for people, I discover something that I didn't know. So, and I mean, we are 8,000 people, and so and this is the beauty again of being a very big community and doing things all in the same directions, which means moving all as a whole company in the same direction. So that was a time when. We had in different parts of the company many ideas about how to involve, to include much more ideas from external, let's say, stakeholders. It might be the same team always thinking about a single thing, or in a factory, in the research and development department, or in marketing. The point was that there was a team, multifunctional, they were dedicated to solving an issue, and that was. But, and this was starting a very, very early stage in the factories, actually, even in the late 80s, 90s, we had this box where we asked the workers in the factory to put ideas and I mean, to write down an idea, any idea they might have had to improve the process they're working on or to improve the company. And so this was really a wood box where people, I mean, during the week were putting small pieces of paper, and once in every week, I mean, we got all these inputs that were fantastic feedbacks about what we have been doing, what we could improve. And so this idea became digital, I mean, in the moment when this was possible, but was like a behavior that we usually had. That idea actually was like duplicated in many other ways inside the company. So we had this Mulino che vorrei community in 2009. So it was like one of the first social marketing platform. And this was everything about, hey, consumers, you love Mulino Bianco, you love our brands. Why don't you give us ideas about new products, about any problem to be solved in current products? And that was, again, a fantastic opportunity to get in connection with, I mean, thousands of people. And we discovered the world of external consumer stakeholders, just brand lovers that wanted to collaborate. And so we had, I mean, thousands of ideas about why, I mean, are we not redesigning a very old product again? And we did actually a number of limited edition products just because consumers were asking. And then we were also understanding that in this way, we could also like launch challenges. And so we had the challenge in 2014. And by the way, we still have the same challenge as I speak now, in asking people to design pasta shapes. And this was not for our community of consumers. It was for any designers on the planet, any designer on the planet. And so we got so many designs and ideas about how to design new pasta shape that we also improved a lot the way we were thinking about pasta shapes, and eventually there was this 3D printer technology developed. And moving on in 2015, we understood that, I mean, external output could really help us in understanding much better where to go in the future and which way, or in which way also to approach innovation. That was the time of design thinking, which was at the very beginning a very experimental. And then it is now a real unit inside the research and development department. We have this very nice place. It's a space. It used to be the old research and development department, huge space where we host every week, I mean, every month. It used to be, of course, much more frequent before the lockdown, but designers. So we understood the role of designers. And actually, we didn't have any designer in the company, so maybe a few one in the marketing. But I mean, when you have 200 people in research and development, 200 people in marketing, and you just have a couple of designers, I can tell you, I mean, they are like frustrated all day long, and they just ask, why don't we put the consumer at the center again? And so now we have this fantastic unit, which is devoted to open innovation in a way, in a very interesting way, because we identify business challenges. So we define a perimeter of investigation, and then we ask designers, students, external stakeholders, might be clients, to come in Barilla for like a 3 months challenge, to stay with us, with our product development people, food technologists, engineers, marketeers, and we explore the problem, meaning that we discover which are the real needs for the people, which is very different from making a brainstorming, very different from the way it used to be. Just let's do a nice brainstorming about the next biscuit. No, it doesn't work anymore. So now it's, what are the problems for people at breakfast? And you will see, we have been launching a pancake last week. I don't know if you, I mean, as a new product with the Mulino Bianco brand. So, you know, pancake, Mulino Bianco, which is rooted in Italian origins. So this was a result of a design thinking project, huge project. We have discovered that breakfast in Italy is changing a lot, of course. So it's not about milk and coffee and biscuit and rusks anymore. It's about how to embrace diversity in all the cultures that actually we are exploring when it comes to food. And so the idea of having a pancake under the Mulino Bianco brand is perfect, because it's very difficult to make pancake. I mean, for some people, they don't like to cook, they don't want, but still they enjoy pancake. And this product, of course, was completely reformulated to be lighter, because we are Italian, so we don't like the very rich recipes that are usually used to make these products. So the portion is smaller. It was really designed by designers. And that was a fantastic experience. And all new products about Barilla today are designed following a complete design thinking approach. So identifying the problem, solutions for that problems, and the products come at the end. So sometimes we also realize, okay, we don't have a solution for this problem. So, I mean, that's maybe it will be a product for a competitor of ours. It will be not a Barilla product. And so now where we are, after this design thinking step, super important was, and this was partly because actually I'm a big fan of open innovation, was realizing that a world of innovation was growing super fast outside Barilla, meaning in the startup world and in the startup ecosystem. That's why, and I really now make the very long story short, we decided in 2017 to fund Blue 8077, which is the venture capital for Barilla, to connect a whole ecosystem of startups to Barilla. So here the idea is to collaborate with innovators, with founders that are, I mean, super specialists of things that we cannot manage. So when it comes to new digital technologies, new ingredients, upcycling, there are many technologies, ideas, products, services that we cannot develop. So it's about how can we work together to scale your solutions, because this makes sense also for our brands. And this is what I do now every day. It's 3 years now, mostly working with startups. So Blue is the gateway for startups who want to connect to Barilla. I mean, every day you can write me proposing your idea. I know where are the problems inside Barilla. And so I create connections between Barilla managers who have problems and with startups who might have the right solutions. So we offer also an accelerator now, which is called the Good Food Makers, which is actually a program for startups to work together with Barilla managers. The idea is to have a safe place where the Barilla managers, who actually can be a little bit slow motion, not so updated. I mean, they know a lot about the company, but they don't know anything about this new solution. So that's a safe place to prototype together with the principle of design thinking, agile working. So 8 weeks of 8 weeks of collaboration. If you can solve the challenge, we are here. I mean, Barilla will be there for you, with the many managers helping you to scale, giving you advice. We don't want any equity. It's for us a way to learn, and for the startup, a way to prove their solution. Sometimes, of course, there is a follow-up, because at the end of the day, if the innovation is really important, we get it, we want it. Sometimes it's only a nice collaboration. Maybe the startup comes back and say, okay, I have to improve what I'm doing, or Barilla will never be a client. But that's a very interesting way for us to learn very quickly what's happening outside. And I think eventually this might be an open innovation model, which should work not only for Barilla, but for many other companies. Because, I mean, this is a single company, Barilla. I mean, we should have an ecosystem of corporate and founders and money, so venture capitals and investors that really help everyone to grow this opportunity, which is fantastic, I think.
Thank you, Michela. I would highlight 3 things. The first one, I visited the lab, the design thinking lab. I was there. It was really fantastic. And the first thing is a reflection on the importance of design, because usually in my innovation course is divided in 2: innovation management and new product development and design. And students from industrial engineers doesn't understand the importance of design in innovation, while instead design is just in the middle between technology, product, and market. And without designer, it is really, really more difficult to come into the market. Designers have the power to support marketing in making the technology closer to the needs, to the users, to the clients, the customers, and so on. So what you were saying before is really, really important for the guys here, but I hope also for the other guys that will listen our interview. The second thing is the importance of an ecosystem and the importance of creating relationships between innovators in general. That could be designer, could be startups, could be venture capitalists, and so on, all together around the problem in order to structure and to solve the problem, but in a limited time frame. So don't spend a lot of time in solving. You have a constrained time frame in which you have to solve. If you are able to solve, good. Otherwise, we move together in order to solving it. Otherwise, you have collected knowledge, you have learned it a bit, but the problem isn't solved. So not continuously solving. We have to constrain the solution of the problem. Otherwise, it is more difficult to find solutions. So I think that this again is another hint that is interesting. and thank you for this. And the third thing is about the role of in the ecosystem, the role of alliances, and in general the role of relationships and innovation relationships between partners. So the possibility of creating alliances with other business partners, and this again contributes to the ecosystem, but it is a complete different way of doing innovation. And it is different from what was done, I don't know, 10 years ago. So the food industry in general is moving toward open innovation mechanisms, as other industries that for sure are moving in the same direction. So the third question is from Anna Guigiani on sustainability. No, sorry, it was the third one, sorry. From Andrea Capuzzo, general technologies for the food industry. Sorry, Andrea.
No problem. Thank you, Francesca, for the floor. So, in production technologies, digitalization and customer-oriented processes have changed in business models all over the industrial sectors. How was affected the food sector by these trends? Has it been shaped by the new production technologies such as 3D printing? Has the food value chain and the business activity been changing? Are servitization and personalization keyword also in the food industry? Are these changing, modifying supply chain management and the interaction with stakeholders? Digitalization, in a particular, has become more and more impactful, as well as the availability of large amount of data from production processes or customer data, feedbacks, and social media. How the food sector is reacting to digital revolution? How does Barilla handle this data?
Okay, wow, this is really a huge thing. And so again, the first thing I want to say is that this is a slow motion food sector. First of all, the sector is very slow motion. And if you think about the way we produce food, we are still producing food, I mean, in the way that was like developed in 60s, 70s, 80s. So food sterilization, so the techniques are still the same. So the impact is not evident, even if it is huge. This is the short answer. It's interesting to say that there have been technologies considered emerging technologies in the food sectors forever. The biggest example is microwaves. So, you know, everyone now is using microwave at home, but when the first microwave oven was launched in the 80s, it was supposed to make a revolution in the kitchen. So, I mean, I remember my mother buying this oven and say, okay, I will throw everything away because now we have microwaves. And you know, still we are microwaving like the milk and the hot water for doing a tea or just reheating things. But this is true at a home level. This is also true at industrial level. I've seen a lot of research. I personally built a microwave oven because we were all convinced that microwaves could disrupt baking, for instance. It's not true. I mean, there are some applications. So the point is that food, again, is not a sector where you can change from like pizza to a pill in 10 years. And these disruptions happened in other sectors. So thinking about mobile transportation and I mean, communication. But having said that, it's true that the food industry is using, I mean, many other tools and services. And so it's an industry which is which is done of equipments. And so how those equipments are produced, the way we collect data, everything has been impacted. So even if it is not so evident, or if I would say it's a little bit slow motion. However, there are, I mean, if we consider the whole supply chain, which is the way I think we should look at this, there are areas of this supply chain actually which are really disrupted. and will be in really in few minutes as I speak. Let's think about Agritech. So Agritech is even a concept which might have sounded a little bit weird, like 10 years ago. So agriculture is agriculture. So farmers and animal farming and everything was like the old way of working. Now, I mean, there are satellites that can look at your fields, and with weather forecast, you can have a ping. You can, I mean, we can ping you and say, you know what, it's raining, so be mindful about your field. And this is true. I mean, there are thousands of farmers already connected, also in Italy, where now we have the younger population, which is really adopting and embracing digital technologies. And there is, I mean, the majority, unfortunately, of the population of farmers, which of course is so old that is still not open to change. And of course, this makes sense because, I mean, you know, infrastructures and people habits. So we are now in the middle of this transition. Hopefully, the young generation will discover that agriculture might be a super interesting, work. We have seen technologies in development really accelerating changes, and this is due also to the fact that we need more sustainable crops, we need more biodiversity, but I think we will touch the point later on. So agriculture is a big thing, Agritech, and when it comes also to urban farming, you know, you have have heard about indoor farming, this way to grow lettuce in places that were abandoned, and now they are repurposed to grow with aeroponics, hydroponics, aniponics technology. And I've been really visiting such plants, are incredible, in places where that were considered food desert, so places, urban places where you really don't have a small green place nowhere. So that's another important part. So Agritech, indoor farming, and all, of course, in the most traditional way, sensors are also disrupting the food industry. So now you can really check every single product you produce. You can trace back the origins of the raw materials. So sensors also on the packaging. So the smart packaging that can help you to preserve the product because there is an alert when the product is expiring. Sensors in factories, sensors in the fields, rapid methods of evaluation of pathogens. So we really see a world of technologies new that are not changing the final products. They are changing the way we produce food in the sense that the food will be safer. The food we might use raw materials that are not coming from abroad, but I mean the supply chain can be improved a lot, and this has a lot to do also with logistics and the tracking, where I mean the foods are going when they arrive at the retailers, and eventually also all the delivery of food, you know, also the food delivery for the final consumers. This is possible because of digitalization, and this was built not for the food. And if we think about e-grocery, so the part of the grocery shopping that we are doing now online, before COVID, we were foreseeing that the food, the e-grocery, which is a small really part of our e-shopping, would have been 5% in 5 years. We are now at that 5% that we were foreseeing 5 years ago. So we have been, of course, I mean, everything was accelerated by this crisis. I mean, we will touch the point later. But a final, very important effect of this digitalization, it's about artificial intelligence that is really not already, let's say, allowing to produce personalized food, which is eventually the holy grail of food. Not yet, at least. It's really still too complicated. But artificial intelligence is allowing the production of the Impossible Burger, for instance. So the plant-based meat alternatives can be produced today because a first group of innovators down in California, they were looking for the molecules present in a muscle, so in an animal piece of meat, in the plant's domain. And so they were looking for any single molecules. And so the first Impossible Burger, the one who was like $135,000 a piece, was actually formulated looking at every single molecules on an animal domain into a plant domain. And that's what was fantastic. And now it was about, I mean, everything was about databases, artificial intelligence, and looking for the right plant. And so it was like, I don't know if you know this thing, I talked to those guys many years ago now. So it was like sending people with backpacks in Indonesia to map every single possible plant on the planet, like a Google mapping when they did the Google map first. So it was like mapping vegetables, fruit, flowers, everything, and finding out the same exact molecules. Now, of course, it's all about fermentation, producing the same elements with biotech. I mean, there is much more. There is cellular agriculture, which is another way to make meat in different ways. But the artificial intelligence was the key technology behind the plant-based movement, which is really surprising and amazing at the same time.
Thank you, Michela. Again, a confirmation. When you have a continuous process industry, innovation comes from the process before than into the product. So it is a confirmation for you guys and for the student that will listen this interview. And thank you for the story of the artificial intelligence applied many years ago. And this again is a confirmation that sometimes technologies enable innovation and then they are renewed in different cycles, because perhaps artificial intelligence algorithms were built and were prompted many years ago. The problem was in data. We have no data storage. We have no sufficient quantity of data to make them be effective, while instead, perhaps the times are mature now. So the stage now is from Anna, and now it's really her turn. Anna Guigiani on sustainability.
Okay. Many sectors are moving to sustainable and low carbon footprint processes. Also, customers are more and more interested in these sustainability aspects. On the contrary, food industry is often taken as example of not sustainable processes because of water consumption and soil mistreatment. Surely, this is only one side of the coin and a partial truth. How is food industry evolving, coping with these issues? How is Barilla facing such a matter?
So thank you. It's another very nice question. And I have to say I'm very lucky because I'm working in a company that 10 years ago decided to fund this Barilla Center for Food and Nutrition, which was at that time, 10 years ago, a think tank where we had the idea, let's bring all the stakeholders around the food system. So our clients, government, NGO, so anybody who could have a say on the food system, and let's talk together about how we see the future. So at that time, so it was an independent think tank. So now it is a foundation. So of course we make donations, but donations are coming also from other companies. And so at that time, they are mostly, let's say, doing basic research. So they publish a lot of papers around sustainability. So at that time, they discovered the three main paradoxes which are still true about the food system. First, we are living in a world where today we still have 800 million people that cannot eat, so starving. You remember, this is incredible, 800 million people that cannot eat. And on the other side, we have more than 2 billion that have all diseases related to food consumption, overeating. So it's diabetes or any kind of disease related to too much food. So access to food and excess of food. First big paradox. So this is the first problem for the food industry. Second problem is not so evident. We are consuming like 40% of the land to produce feed for animals. And I mean, animals are one of the first causes of greenhouses gases, and you know maybe this aspect much better than me. So question mark and paradox, are we really sure we have to use the land to produce food which is not for people but for feed? So it's using the land for food, feed, or fuel, because we don't have to forget that this is a very small amount of land, but there are technologies that are promoting using, I mean, crops that should be supposed to be for humans, I mean, to produce biofuels. So big important question mark. Everything is causing, I mean, what we say, we are eating our planet in a way that every year we would need much more than one planet to survive. If we want to get to 2050, we would need 3 planets. So that's another problem. And last paradox, which is the most really scary things, is that if we consider the food waste, and you know the food waste is caused by the food industry, but is caused mainly at the agriculture level, then there is the food industry, which is still have, I mean, byproducts and food waste, and then there is a huge quantity at home. So let's consider all the food waste. If we take that food waste, we could feed those people in needs like 3 times. So this is the food system. And for me, anytime that I think about sustainability, I want to remind that 3 main problems are food excess, food waste that could feed the people, and the use of land for feed, food, or fuel. So these are huge challenges. And so what we are doing as a company is really trying to follow our mission, which is today, after 10 years, still try to produce food which is good for you and for the planet. And eventually I will tell you more KPIs in what we are doing. And maybe we are not talking about this enough, not because we want to be like the good guys, but because the problem is our problem. So we have to solve as a food industry, but we are a single food industry. But we as consumers, we must vote, I will say. So anytime you choose the wrong thing, you're paying for that. So you're giving money to someone. And so think about who you're giving money to.
You are favoring too. So
no, I mean, no, and I will be much more.
I agree, absolutely. So when you buy, you have to think about the fact that you are providing benefit to those companies. So choose food and having in mind the long-term objectives and not only the short term or your benefit and your tastes. So sorry.
I just want to finish this point because what we can do and what we do as a company, we of course we are part of the problem. So we must be also part of the solution. So I don't want to give the message that we don't want to do anything. We are actually, for instance, nutrition, we are reformulating products. Every single product we redesign, we have strict nutritional guidelines. And I mean, even if we launch a new indulgent product, you know that we have launched also other products that are more whole grains. And if we launch an indulgent product, you can be sure that our is best in class for sugar, so the lowest content possible. We have, I mean, we don't use palm oil anymore for a sustainability reason, not because it's cheaper. It's way much more expensive. You cannot imagine how much money we put in this choice, which is still not ideal, because we would need different oils, and we are researching new solutions. Then when it comes to packaging, 99.7% of our packaging are recyclable. 100% will be designed to be recyclable. We want to get rid of plastic, even if we know that we still have plastic. So I mean, and this is where there is the back, let's say the backstage. A lot of research, a lot of startups working with us, a lot of problems are still to be solved. Then there is also the last part, which is we eliminated any gender pay gap, which is important. I mean, so now if you work at Barilla, you get the same money, which is not obvious. I can. You are right. I can say. Okay, and so we are also trying to talk about lifestyle, physical education. We promote a lot of. I mean, I would say. General education, not only about food. You know, we promote the Mediterranean diet. We are lucky. We are sit on a good diet, sustainable diet. And so it's about you, how much pasta you will eat. It's not about us. So we need you, and that's an important point that then I stop here. It's about food literacy and food education. This is something more for the university or for, I mean, primary families. School.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and families. So we have to give people the tools, which is to me food literacy, the basic tool to let them
make decision and right choices.
Informed decision to understand that it's your final choice, who you give the money and how you would eat. But at least you have the tools to decide. And I know that we don't have, as an Italian population in the core of the Mediterranean diet, we still are lacking, and we still have the most obese children in Europe. And I finish here.
Okay, thank you, Michela. Now time is passing, so I have to go fast. The last question is from Zariat Shiraliyeva on the COVID emergence. So. Zariat, it's your turn.
In relation to the current pandemic situation, there are significant challenges such as logistic, organizational, and financial to be faced by companies and industrial sector in general. What are the most important challenges for the food industry? How has the traditional food value chain be impacted? And what are the opportunities to adapt? With the pandemic, many small and medium enterprises have gone bankrupt. How do you think the market structure, understood as an integration of the supply chain, can change? How could the value chain, but business model in general, be ready for this crisis, and what kind of action can be taken in the future in order to mitigate potential difficulties in the case of a new crisis? Thank you.
No, thank you for the question. I will be, I mean, maybe it will be a shorter answer here, but actually, I want to point out a few things about the food sector. So first of all, I'm positive. I'm an optimist. So I know, and you know, that after a big crisis, and this is not something that everyone is saying after a big crisis, there will be a huge opportunity. There will be. I mean, there is a lot of money that are ready to be like, that is not from our government. I think about investors. So they want to put money on good ideas. So the food sector has, he's in the middle of a revolution, and this is an opportunity. So from one side, what happened? People were like, running, buying everything like pasta. And so we were happy at the very beginning, of course, but this was causing a big crash of the logistics. So the food industry was not ready to serve in such a short amount of time, such a big amount of products. And eventually people then, they didn't know what to do with all these products that they were buying. So big brands were benefiting at the beginning, but everything then switched online. So nobody was ready to go online first, in the food industry especially, when we have big packs that were not designed to be, light enough to be brought by people with bites. And so that's we are still struggling with all these e-commerce, but opportunities are coming also in this part. So food deliveries companies are growing. Artificial intelligence and the way to figure out how to manage these new packaging designs are growing. Small brands, it's true, some are really dying, but some others who were able to pivot to direct to consumers, they are growing. All this better for you small brands wave is still growing, and we as big companies, we are a little bit slow. And so the big idea, the good ideas of small brands are still there. Everything related to sustainability, local products, it's growing. Better for you products, benefit for the mood, for instance. It's a new trend, a lot of bars with very natural ingredients that are helping you to stay more calm, to relax, all the problems that we have been having during this lockdown. So those are opportunities. What is struggling very much now is the food service. So restaurants and bar, and we are suffering with them because those are very big, important clients also for the big companies. So that is where I see the most opportunities coming next, because people for sure want to go back and have fun and social moments. And so I hope that people will be more mindful in saying that it will be not an aperitivo all together, one on top of the other, with cheap and low quality product. It will be an experience with more value, in order also for the food service, for the restaurant, to redesign this experience of eating together and having fun together, which is the most important part about food. So we will see, I think, a lot of new companies coming. What I was mentioning before, the new technologies, agriculture. I don't think the future of food will be big companies. It will be small companies and small ventures, more local, with more biodiversity, with healthier food, with more mindfulness about food. So that's why I'm positive, because I see that we are getting rid of the bad stuff. And this is a good thing. And then there will be this important push about personalization of food that we didn't actually really touch, that I think it will be taking maybe few more years, but there is now the convergence about the health tech, and so all the data that we are gathering about how much calorie we might need, how much nutrients, how actually we could improve our performance in sports, associating food and health. And it's a little bit more complicated because there is the gut microbiota, which is, a third element that we still are not a little bit under evaluating, but I'm convinced that the future of food will be a better future, and there is space for new ideas. So I'm very positive.
Okay, thank you, Michela, for this hope, for the opportunities, for the optimistic view, because we require optimistic view. And I think you are right, because for instance, I have a case here in Turin of different startups that are built in order to recuperate food from bars and restaurants, or also from little retailers. So your bakery, there is food that is not sold, and they recuperate these pieces of food and redistribute and sell again. So a sort of secondary market. So I'm sure that, as you say, there are a lot of opportunities and there are a lot of new possibilities of innovations. With this hope and with this optimistic view, we close here our interview. We are a bit late, but not so much. So thank you to all of you. Michela first for her availability, because it was really interesting, important, but a pleasure to have her with us. Also for all my students that for sure will benefit from your words. And thank you also, you guys, for your effort, because you engaged in this experiment of interviews. That is something a bit different from learning point of view. So I wish you my best wishes of good Easter, and bye-bye to all of you.